Hello, and a big warm welcome to Jen. Welcome
Hello.
in, Jen. Hello. Jen, you're the founder of Reflective Gap, and with Reflective Gap, you offer workshops and you offer talks, and these are all around mental health. I know you mentioned before as well, you go into hospitals and places like that to offer some of these talks.
Mhm.
And a lot of this is based, you lean heavily on your own lived experiences. And today that's it, what you're here to talk about, your own lived
Mhm.
experiences. And these include sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, trafficking, and all of these part of when you were in the foster care system. Um, and to follow this conversation, you've got a poem that you're going to share with us as well
Mhm.
today, which I'm really excited for. Over to you, Jen. Thank you so much again for being here. And yeah, just an opportunity to introduce yourself.
Well, thank you, Ricky. It's an absolute pleasure to be on your show. And, you're an inspiring young man, really are.
Thank you.
Um, what I'd like to say, I'm Jen Grace. I'm 57, you know. Don't look at her now, don't I? But yes, I'm
I
57.
wouldn't have known.
And I wasn't wanted at birth, and sadly I was put into care, and even in care I wasn't wanted. And at a very young age, as a toddler, I started to be abused by my foster father. It started to be physical, it started to be name calling, and also preaching. So my foster father was um, a strong ex-army person, and he what I thought was he believed in Christianity, but he used it as a weapon, and said that because they relied on fostering mainly people of color and disabled people, and they used to kind of like use that as a way of making us feel like we're evil. And so as time went on, me being the middle of the long-term children, there was two, myself, an older girl, and my sister who came afterwards. And I became a mini mother to those three because my heart ached when they cried or when they hurt. So I used to give them a hug and things like that. Our lives were, we lived majority of our time when we was in the foster home in a shed which was, those old-fashioned coal sheds that what you couldn't, I mean, when I got to 9, I had to hunch over because I couldn't stand up straight in it. And that was our home until it was time to bedtime majority of the time, or unless we were called in to clean the house and that. During that time, I found a way of escaping, and this is not the right way. I it was so detrimental in the long run. I self-harmed, and I ended up going into an ambulance, and they were so lovely to me. The paramedics stroked my hair. They kind of like said, asked me if I was all right. And as a little girl, you so craved for that.
Yeah.
And I was a little child who was being an adult in so many ways. And and in my mind, I thought this is a way to escape. I need to go home and look after my children, my siblings, and but I can take a little time out by, you know, and this became a vicious circle. So when the foster parents sold us on to different people, and these have
You
been
said sold.
sometimes,
Did you say
sorry.
did you say sold?
Yeah, sold on to different people. And some people would be very wealthy, high positions, and they would, you know, and because I wasn't being heard,
Mm,
and I had behavioural problems. I was so angry. Um, I wasn't being heard, so I began to not speak. So for 15 years, I was a selective mute, and but I spoke to my siblings in secret. And we kind of like through that time was wrongly diagnosed at the age of 11 and sectioned in a psychiatric hospital. They didn't have any room anywhere else, so they put me on a geriatric ward. And then around 12, 13, I was given ECT, electrical, you know,
Yeah.
and that in itself it was awful.
Mm.
Then I proceeded to have um, child who was being groomed by my foster parents, and because I had this wrong diagnosis, nobody was listening to me that my child wasn't safe. So in the end, I kind of like wrapped her up and took her down to the phone box and called 999 and said I was hurting my daughter so that she could be safe. And within 3 months, she was adopted by someone else, not looking into the case at all or what was really happening. My voice wasn't being heard. All they saw was labels. You know, I was diagnosed with schizophrenia. I had a label of being acutely retarded and educationally subnormal. So my schooling, well, all three of our schoolings were in a school for children of being acutely retarded. And so I taught myself to read. You know, when they had meetings about me, I taught myself to read. I taught myself to mathematics. When they had meetings about me, you know, those old polystyrene tiles on the ceiling.
Hmm.
You know, I could go to those meetings, but I wasn't included in the meetings. I had to sit on a chair far away while they sat on a desk and to entertain myself.
I
I
mean,
used to add
no
and
wonder, Jen.
subtract, and, you know, and just, you know, it was great because it was like, nobody knows I can do this. And then I remember, I think I must have been about 9, 10, and I remember in the papers there was I think it was the Walton family who had six little girls, 6 or 8 little girls.
Mm.
And two of those names were me and my sisters. And I was intrigued to know what this was about. So I sneaked the paper, and, you know, sneaking the paper would have been so, if they found out, my life wouldn't be worth, you know. But I
Right.
was determined to read that whole paragraph. It took me months, but I managed to read it. And from there on, I used to steal books from school and things like that and read.
Mhm.
But but what they didn't realize was when I was reading, when they had notes and they wrote notes about me, they would leave them out. So believing I couldn't read them anyway. But
Mhm.
it was like I it was my way of saying, ha ha ha, you don't know me.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
but it was but that also was kind of like, I think I had a bit of determination in me as a child. I kept on fighting.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't speak, I fought with my eyes. So my eyes said a lot to people. My eyes were my voice, and I used to kind of like look at people. When they hurt me, I'd look at them. And, you know, they became fearful of my eyes. No
Mm.
longer my voice, it was my eyes. And, you know, through my time, also, I just felt that you know, I couldn't look after my sisters anymore because I needed someone to look after me. I was going through puberty. I didn't know what it was. I was, you know, being sectioned to the hospital because I still, the world to my mind was feeling that I was the bad one. And, you know, and I kind of like that self-hate you have for yourself because nobody's there to rescue you. And you're looking on the world absolutely fearful, and you're picking up every sign and every clue of someone's body language because you're trying to keep safe. And
Yep.
that's how I fragmented because in my being, dissociative disorder. So what I basically had parts of me to keep me going,
Yep.
I had to fragment. I had to carry pockets of memories so that it wasn't a hole because I wouldn't be able to keep on going.
Definitely. It was too overwhelming to.
Yeah, exactly. So you split in, and those memories don't actually join together at first because you can't cope with it. And then, so as time went on, the more I kept on misbehaving, as they called it, and that, you know, they,
Behave, behaving normally
they,
to.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. They sedated me even more. And through that sedation, it became healthy. It became again, another way of where I didn't have to feel. I was numb, completely numb to the world.
Mm.
And I imagine I was. so underweight as a child from until I started those psychotic medication. And I was a size, I was 32 stone. I went up from set to 32 stone because of the medication. It
Wow.
increased my appetite. It just, it was horrendous. And I became this big sumo woman, but I was like, nobody will touch me. So I thought, but it wasn't the case. And some people like me, some people kind of like did harm me. Some people actually were scared of me. And it was like that again was so confusing because again, as you've got this kind of like all these different personalities and all these memory pockets, you build up another kind of like memory bank because as a teenager, of all the negative stuff that people or all the stuff, like the comments, the judgment, and never seeing the person. So for you to cope with that as well, again, another lot of fragmented me's inside me, and I call it the internal tattoo because it's so embedded. And this came a vicious circle. My daughter I actually had a phantom pregnancy over grieving for the loss of my daughter. All the symptoms of being pregnant, and no, that broke me. And
Jen,
I,
there's a lot in your story, and I
mm,
to just to go back a little bit on some of it, I could hear that part of you saying that this isn't the right way, and
mm,
it's completely understandable that you tried to escape in any
mm,
way possible from the life you had and from what was
yeah,
happening to you, and also when you became a teenager, that girl saying that I couldn't look after, I needed someone to look after me. That's what you always deserved. You always deserved someone to look after you
mm,
at that age.
mm,
Well,
yeah. And then it's like, but I never got it. And then it's like, and then you get too old and too used to not having anybody around you.
yeah.
So you do it your way, and your way is not always the right way. You make mistakes. I made mistakes. I made mistakes as a mother. I made mistakes as a human being. First of all, I didn't trust anybody. I told majority of people the
Mm.
same as I say foster parents, my foster givers, I would say, and those who abused me. I tied everybody in that same brush. So I missed out so much of people's help in my mid-20s because I was scared. I was scared of people, and I was also
Why would
scared of myself.
why would you trust people? You
Exactly.
wasn't
But that
stressed.
doesn't come into the equation. There's never saying, why wouldn't she?
Mm.
It's always the problem. And, it's always looking at the issue that I'm not this, I'm not doing that, I'm not doing this. And, I'm kind of like, so as time went on, my foster mother died. And for some reason, I grieved so much for her, like I've never grieved for anybody in my life. And yet she was so involved in it. And I shut that down. I shut it down. I had this thing where I so wanted her to love me that I forgot the stuff that she did to me. I wanted her to see me and treat me like she did her blood children and grandchildren, but
Mm.
she never did. And I grieved so much the loss of her and that losing any figure of a mother. And but as time went on, and she died, my foster father drunk even more and chucked me out the house. And I was found in the middle of the woods by a dog walker, completely naked. This is in my mid-20s. He'd taken everything that well, clothes, everything off me and chucked me out. And they found me and they kind of like I remember waking up in hospital and the again it was the care, the love they gave me, and I needed it and I latched onto it. But then it was a vicious circle. I saw people having lives and I never had a life. And I so wanted that life. I began, because and this is a bit of the rebel in me as well.
Yeah.
Because when so I was in a group home and you know that it was like you have to do as you're told. And, I wanted to go back out to work and things like that. Because I did work when I was a teenager. They got us working in a nursing home and, doing paper rounds, all that, but we never saw the money.
Mm.
And, but I wanted to work for me. And so I managed to sneak out and said I was joining a group and I was working.
Wow.
And I absolutely loved it. I met people. I was working in an old people's home, and
Mm.
just to sit, and I got the sack because I sat with the old people too long, listening to their stories and just being with them. And you have to, it's like a conveyor belt. You have to do this and do that and do that at such a time. And
Mm.
if you can't, keep up with that and treat people like that, objects, then you don't sustain the job.
Mm.
And that's really what happened. And my two sisters, I had, so my son was born,
Yeah.
and we were told by um, my mental health person who changed my diagnosis to post-traumatic stress,
Hmm.
who drew me off the medication where all those emotions and all that feeling was
Mm.
coming back. Oh, it was the most scariest thing. And it's like, I I was withdrawing from heavy. So, I had injections. I was taking about 15 tablets a day. And I was literally withdrawing. I had the shakes. I had oh, you name it, hallucinations. But that medication was being withdrawn from me and I had to deal with my emotions and feelings. How do I do that? I decided to move away with my son and and but with that I found out that one of my sisters had ended her life, and then it was the guilt, and I thought, well, how can I cope with this? How on earth can I cope with that? I've got a choice. Do I go or do I keep on living? And I got a letter from her to say, you know you can fight this, you can speak the truth, but I can't, please. And I knew I had to, so I started writing my book.
Yeah.
I wrote everything down, and when I showed people, well, you can't read or write. How can you do that? And it was the denial that she couldn't have done it. She couldn't have done it because she can't read and write.
Yeah.
And, and I had the choice of telling people, but I thought, no, I can't keep on telling people. I can't keep on explaining who and what I can achieve and what I can't achieve.
Yeah.
And I went and did open learning, and I got qualifications after qualification. And again, only slowly and surely are these qualifications coming out after years and years because, it was, you become very secretive because you don't want anybody else to spoil it.
Mm. There's a couple of things in that that
Mm,
I absolutely love actually, and that's the rebel in you that went and read them books, and that's what saved you at that time as well. It's
mm, mm,
still learning, still reading, and now writing and writing your own story. And
mm,
the other part that comes into that is the selective mutism. You your voice was kept quiet, so of course that affects you, and you got to a point where you couldn't talk
mm,
anymore
mm,
because
mm,
you were kept quiet. And that book also kind of brings the rebel in that out as well, that you're not keeping me quiet anymore.
mm.
Mm.
Yeah. And then when I sent it to a publisher, they wanted to liquidize it down and make it kind of like serialized. I kind of like agree because I felt like if I didn't, I wouldn't have let my sister down. I did. So it within about 5 years later, I managed to get the rights back, and then I approached Sam Holton, who's a very good friend of mine, and she helps. I wrote it again, and I wrote the truth, dehumanisation, because that's what it was. I think, we had this situation
Yeah.
where we have to be so, so careful on what we're saying, and we can never. And this is what happened in this is how abuse happens,
Yeah.
because we have to be mindful of what we're saying and don't say this, don't say that. And how on earth can we make changes if we're being this? Such sterile people that we can't
Yeah.
be honest. We can't be upfront of what's wrong or what's right. Life is to live. And if nobody, when I was younger, there was there was there was a kind of no, I'll be honest, there was racial tension in the town I was living. Me and my siblings were the only black people in that town. It was very rich farming village, and we stood out when we were different. And when somebody's different, regardless, I know I've done it to other people. You've taken the mickey out of it. My difference was my skin color. And, and rightly or wrongly, those children are now, and some of the adults did it not because they were, racist. It was because I was different. And then this is where we have to be there, kind of like look at things carefully, because racism is a deliberate attack on someone's identity. They weren't actually attacking my identity. They were kind of like very wary of who I was because I didn't look like them. And that's a bit different in my book. But then I did the same. I spent years kind of like judging, white people, every white person's the same because of in my experiences. But as time went on, it's like, how do you stop that? Because I was filled with so much anger.
Yeah.
But that anger, I kind of like through the medication and everything like that, kind of like pushed it down, pushed it down, pushed it down, because the punishment for being angry was hospital.
Yeah.
So it became a physical illness. I had physical illness. I can't see. I am blind in this eye. I'm very limited in this eye. And that is part of me holding things down, being told to not speak about it. And I still get it now from people. Oh, don't talk about that. Oh, don't. Oh, I won't be able to sleep all night. And things like that. And it's like, oh, you can't, it's a past, move on, move on. And you just think, but how are you going to accept if we're going to make changes? And I know, I'm not a person to ram detail into people's faces. That's not what it's about. But it's about speaking one's truth so that we can make changes. We hear about all these young children being abused, being angry, being, killing one another. Why is that? We're telling them to man up, don't show your feelings, if this didn't happen, move on. We don't talk about that. We can't
No.
keep on doing that.
And I'm glad you brought up the physical because there's so much research out there that suggests it becomes physical. Most
Mm,
illnesses that come from trauma. And you know what? You had every reason to be angry. That weren't an abnormal reaction to anything you went through. You were absolutely had every single right. Not that you need a right, but of course you were angry. That's not a that's not abnormal. That's not something to put someone in hospital for.
mm.
If
But I think
you're bad,
it
you're
is,
gonna be pissed
but
off.
you go on thinking that nobody knew about what was happening. And so in 1996, I seeked my social work records,
Mm,
and it took 10 years to get hold of them because they wouldn't allow me to have it. And once I finally got bit by bit, and I'm still getting dribs and drabs in now, I never get them as a whole. And each of them, they knew about it. There's comments saying,
mm,
well, these children, we believe, are being abused, but because they're acutely retarded, it will not give them a long-term effects. um, you know, and then, well, we believe these children are being abused, but, the problem we have, who would take care of these misfits if we move them from this house?
wow.
And this, it's like my days. And you think these words, okay, were written down on paper.
Yeah.
Now you're not allowed to write those words, but does that change the mindset on
Mm.
children? Do we still, do these organizations still think the same about why they wouldn't tackle or why they wouldn't, but don't actually put it on paper?
I can hear there needs to be changes.
Yeah, it does, it does. I mean, we blame young people for the mess of the society. We're scared of young people. Why? When actually, are we actually teaching them the best way of life? We've kind of like put mobiles you know, laptops and things like that in their faces,
Mm.
where they're being fed on all this stuff from all different parts of the world about all different things. And then they're trapped in there because they haven't got anybody to talk about it with. They haven't got anybody to kind of like, kind of like only their peers who are in the same position. They're young, they're influenced by things. And majority of them, I would say majority of them don't know the consequences of what the actions. Someone's angry or someone's jealous, and all of a sudden a life is taken because they've been told, hold it in. You don't be angry.
It's a
Schools,
it's a normal emotion. That anger's absolute
exactly.
anger's your way of
Healthy.
saying, I don't like this, and setting
Yeah,
boundaries. I don't want you to do that.
exactly, exactly.
It's a
Yeah.
normal
And it's like I don't know if you heard of these break houses when you go in and you smash everything up.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
If they had these in schools,
Mm.
where children can go in and they can smash it up, but not the consequences. I hate that word. Is the next thing they do is they have to put it all together and make it tidy, because actually getting all that anger out and then feeling relaxed by putting it all back to where it was as much as you can, and then put some new stuff out to the next person is so so important. I think because it also teaches them responsibility. It's okay to get angry. It's okay. But anger, as long as you can clean up that mess in a healthy way, it's
Controlled anger that
okay.
you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I I really appreciate you coming on and sharing everything that you have with us, Jen. And I also know that you've got a poem that you're going to read for us as well. How are you ready to read that now for us?
In the orchard of shared roots, we gather beneath the apple trees, hands entwined, like branches drawn together by unseen sap. Each blossom floated down ivory blush and rose, a reminder that colour drifts on a sane spring breeze. Side by side, we pressed our feet into the loom, planting saplings of trust where distrust once grew. But as I inhaled the sweetness of unified blossoms, I felt a stir of my own shadowed judgment. I too had shelled bright faces into fearful shapes. That morning light revealed every prejudice as pollen, stuck beneath my nails, clinging onto my breath. I saw how I built fences of blame in my mind, painting entire families with a brush of hurt. The orchards whispered, even hurt people hurt people. So I opened up my heart like a widening leaf, letting forgiveness settle like morning dew. I stepped among friends whose skins danced different hues, realizing we all carry seeds of brazen, waiting for the warmth of honesty to bloom. Together we learned the art of cross-pollination, sharing stories until our petals overlapped, turning story into compost for compassion. The bees of understanding alighted for each bloom, carrying new truths from branch to branch. Now when I walk these rows of trembling light, I carry no seed of blame in my pocket. My roots drink deep from empathy's clear stream, and every hand I grasp becomes an open bud, proof that in nature's orchard we all belong.
Thank you for watching. Seriously, it means the world to me and our guests that you took the time to watch. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button because it really does help the channel to grow. And equally, you won't miss what's coming next if you do that. The aim of this channel and what me and the guests are trying to do is we're trying to inspire, and we're also trying to give other people a sense of belonging. And at the very least, we're trying to make other people feel seen and heard. And that's our hope with this channel. If this video spoke to you anyway, then please do check out our other videos just here. We will catch you in the next episode.